Japan by River Cruise is made possible thanks to the kind generosity of our sponsors.
This is a message from Wacky Japan Incorporated. Are you a news organization or website who wants to publish a clickbait article about how weird Japan is? Don't do any in-depth research that might force you to confront your own prejudices. Just hire us to create an outlandish precedent for you to base your entire think piece on. For a reasonable fee, our professional staff will lick eyeballs, eat wasps, set up a dirty underwear vending machine, not have sex, purchase sex robots, not have sex with those robots, or any other weird shit that you think Japanese people probably do. Check for more details at wackyjapan.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to Japan by River Cruise. I'm Bobby Judo.
And I'm Ollie Horn.
So on today's show, a push to move to online banking runs into trouble when users can't figure out which part of their computer screen to stamp with their ink on. Also, Ollie's got your River Cruise recommendation. Yeah, Ollie?
Yes, this week's recommendation is a cruise set up by Osaka's prefectural government to combat homelessness and poverty in the region. A 2-hour private cruise on a chartered boat, specially renamed A Helping Hand, will set sail every week for the next 6 weeks and will allow ample thinking space and stimulating scenery for the 15 specially selected government employees to meet and workshop new ideas on how the poorest in the region can be helped.
Plus, the Japanese river cruise industry does its part to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus by offering unused boats as mobile quarantine centers. And don't worry, infected passengers will be kept in strict isolation until the virus has completely been eliminated from their system or until they feel like leaving. But first, soap talk.
Bobby Judo, how's your week been?
Good week so far. I managed to get out and go for a hike with a Brian from Fukuoka, one of the original Brians from Fukuoka. He's a very cool guy.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, no. I got hired to MC an event for an art party. They had one of those live paint events at an electronic cigarette store, which is interesting because
this is like douche squared to the power of douche.
Hey, I'm paid to not think that. But the artists were pretty cool. They did a live paint event where they had 4 different artists who did, like, within an hour, they painted something that was supposed to be inspired by the theme of the electronic cigarette store and their new Shinhatsubai Shohin, their new product that they were launching for sale. And the theme.
So tell me, what is the theme of an electric cigarette shop? How can vape be any other theme than I'm addicted to cigarettes and I don't mind looking like I've got a USB memory stick in my mouth?
The key words were intense, which was the name of the new product that they're selling because it's been redesigned to have a more intense flavor to match regular cigarettes. Orange was another theme because that's the color of the brand. And then triple or 3, the number 3, because they were promoting the new triple filter pro technology. I'm getting really specific with this. I probably shouldn't be. But
no, it's great. The listeners need to know.
Yeah.
So what kind of people were at this event?
I mean, a lot of the artists' fans showed up, and there were these moments where I was like, okay, art is actually still pretty cool because 2 of the artists, they did their live paintings, and one of them, he was working off of a picture of, it was like some Miley Cyrus looking celebrity in black and white with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, like this very kind of like sexy posed cigarettes are cool kind of thing. Yeah, the cigarette hanging out of her mouth. And in his interpretation of that photograph that he was working off of and recreating in paint, he made the choice to leave the cigarette out completely. And then in like the talk segment, he was like, yeah, I was working off a picture of somebody smoking a cigarette. And I quit smoking electronic cigarettes a couple months back and I'm never going to smoke them again. And so I left it off. And it was like, all right, cool, 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 cool. And then another one of the artists, her painting was a woman smoking an electronic cigarette designed to look exactly like the product that was on sale. And you could see the smoke coming out of the electronic cigarette and floating up past her face. And the part where the smoke overlapped with her face was a skull. So
Right.
she's half face, half skull, where the cigarette smoke is turning her face into a skull. And she's got this little word bubble coming out. And in English, she's saying, I want to be a natural person. Um, and so I'm like watching these two people paint these pictures, and I'm like, okay, this is like they've been hired and probably paid something to participate in this event. They both have like exhibitions scheduled at this venue. And this is like a huge, like a big fuck you in terms of the message of their
Oh, hang
work
on.
to cigarettes.
This is this is a vape shop come art gallery.
It's a lounge space. So it's this place in Tenjin. It set up shop where that Line store used to be, the Line Cafe in Nishidori,
Okay, yeah,
across from H&M next to
yeah.
the ice cream shop. And it's a free lounge. So anybody, even if you don't have electronic cigarettes or want to buy electronic cigarettes, you can stop in there. It's a fancy lounge, and you can use their free Wi-Fi and use their free outlets and get free drinks. They give out free
And
coffee.
it's passive smoke hoarder.
Yes, you can have all the secondhand smoke you want. But so I was in charge of like running the talk show, and as soon as that guy was like, "Yeah," and I chose to leave out the electronic cigarette, and I was like, "Okay, no follow-up questions for you." And then I asked the girl who painted the skull, the half skull girl, and the funny thing is, like, I am 100% sure now that I've heard her explain it that hers was she was not aware of what it seemed the message she was conveying was with the piece. It was completely
Right.
unironic.
Did you know that skulls and ghosts are symbolism for death in some cultures?
Yeah, yeah.
Could-
It looks like you
well,
painted
I
a
mean,
very American early 90s anti-tobacco ad. But
right, right. Well, at least none of these customers are going to be in a vape shop smoking their vape and suddenly looking at this art going, wait, what? Did you say this is bad for me? I needed a 3 by 3 foot canvas and a mural to be told that this is no one.
Well, the other funny
No
part
one.
was they hired somebody to cater it, and they hired like this restaurant to come in and cater again, kind of like to the theme of their branding, their brand's colors and food design to represent it. And so the caterers are not really familiar with what this place is, other than what they were told in terms of what the colors are. And then a lot of the people who were attending were the artists' fans who were there, not because they necessarily care about electronic cigarettes. And so one of them
If
got handed the electronic cigarette that you get to like try out while you're there, and didn't know whether or not they were allowed to smoke it. So they asked the caterers, who also didn't know whether or not they were allowed to smoke it. So the caterer comes to me and she goes, "Hey, is there somewhere here where they're allowed to smoke?" And I was like, "Do you wait, do you mean like other than the electronic cigarettes that are being given out here? Like do you mean like a regular cigarette?" And
regular
she's like,
smoking.
"No, I just mean in general." I'm like, "Yeah, they could probably smoke anywhere here
Well, I
in the
guess
smoking shop."
well, that's the point, right? That these electric cigarettes represent a legal loophole, right? If there was any message of electric cigarettes, it's that the rules against branding and marketing
Yeah.
cigarettes are not extended to electronic cigarettes. Additionally, the rules about smoking inside are not applied to e-cigarettes. So, if that catering company really was on message and wanted to cater in the spirit of legal loopholes, I imagine they were serving whale. In other news, I have almost I've been banned. I've been banned from an app.
From an app.
There's an app in Southeast Asia called Grab, right, which is like the Uber equivalent of well, like the local, it's like a local taxi company, but it's not just taxis. You order food from it. It's an e-wallet.
That was great because what you wanted to say was it's like the equivalent of Uber, and instead you said the Uber equivalent, and then you were just struggling to figure out a way to finish the end of the sentence.
I just got stuck.
It's like the
I was
Uber equivalent of, a service similar to an equivalent and equal to Uber?
also, it's an Uber equivalent in that SoftBank have given it loads of money.
Yeah.
It's a subsidized cheap ride. But basically, I was about to be the victim of a scam, and there's a scam that happens where one of the things which I think people get wrong about Uber, people say, "Oh, isn't Uber a great business because it was the first time you could hail a ride on your phone, right?" And people think that the value proposition of Uber is that you can just get a taxi at any time. In my view, the real value proposition of Uber is the certainty of pricing. That no longer do you get into a car and there's this kind of unknown bit of bartering, or there's this stranger that might overcharge you, that might take a route that you're not sure of, that might say it's double the price of what he said when you got in the car. What Uber did, like the main improvement in the user experience of hailing a cab, is you knew how much you were going to pay, and in the event that you were
Yeah.
overcharged, or the event that the driver took a different route, then there would be some third party that can help arbitrate the dispute. So for me, that's what the value prop of Uber is. And so it's the same for Grab, that there's predictability. You know how much the ride's going to cost before you get in. But the exception is tolls. If you go through a toll road, then the driver is allowed to add those numbers on at the end of the trip and then charge you how much they paid.
Right.
And they pay the toll roads themselves in cash or by card. And I was taking a trip home from the comedy club back to where I'm staying, and I noticed, I've taken this trip dozens of times now, and I noticed the driver kept ignoring the GPS. So when the GPS was saying right, he was going left.
Mm.
And so basically, he managed to take us through 2 toll roads. So by the time we got to that first toll road, I said, "Excuse me, may I ask why we're taking the tolls?" And he got really defensive and really cross. He's like, "It's just the way the GPS is telling me." I said, I don't think it is. I've been watching the GPS from here, and you've been ignoring it." And he went, "Oh, well, I'm allowed to take the route I want. I'm the driver here." I was like, "Yeah, fine. I'm just asking why we've taken the toll road." And so I pretty soon suspected this was the scam he was trying to do, which is he takes an unsuspecting passenger through a toll road, and then when he types into Grab, "Hey, I paid $3 on tolls," he'll put $4 in.
Right.
And then I get charged the $4. And so it doesn't really amount to much for me as a passenger, and it's not the kind of amount of money that you'd notice necessarily. But if he does this for every unsuspecting passenger, then he can, in some cases, double his fare, right? Because we went through 2 or 3 toll roads.
Right.
So no, I called him out on this, and he just got cross, like properly cross. And so I said, "Well, look," he said, "if you're unhappy, just complain to Grab." I said, "Well, fine, I will, but like, what's your side of the story? Should I say that you were choosing not to follow the GPS?" And in the end, he just said, "Fine. Well, will you shut up if I just say I'm going to pay the tolls?" I went, "Yeah." And that really annoyed him because he was kind of egging for an argument now. He was just kind of crossed by the wheel. So I went, "Yeah, fine." He went, "Oh, right. Well, in that case, just shut up." I went, "Okay, fine." "Shut up!" I went, "Yeah, I'm not talking." "You see," and so he was doing everything he could to provoke. I said, "Well, I won't talk then." And then as we were driving, he then opened up the window as like a further to further provoke me. So he winds the window down, and it's just, we're driving at like 80, 90 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
Window fully down. And so I said, "Excuse me, would you mind putting, just shut up!" "Fine, I'm asking you to bring that window up, aren't I?" And he goes, I've wound the window down because of the terrible smell." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "There's a terrible smell." I said, "Okay, well, I'm not sure you ought to do something about that." And he said, "I can smell alcohol." I said, "Right, well, you shouldn't be drinking." Because I hadn't been, I mean, the funny thing is I hadn't been drinking that night.
Yeah.
Rarely had not been. I went to a banana leaf and had a tea. And so I just said, "Well, in that case, you shouldn't. If you're smelling alcohol, it's on you. And so I think you might be drunk, and so you shouldn't be driving." And he went, "Right, well, should I go to the police station? Is that what you want? Should I take you to the police station?" I said, "No, don't." And he was just doing everything he could to escalate.
Yeah, but to be fair, so are you.
Well, do you know what? I don't think I was.
Yeah.
Obviously, I could have just ignored the provocation of the window, but it was annoying. And I suppose when he said I smell something really bad, I shouldn't have said, "Did you fart?" But other than little things like that, I think I was pretty safe. And anyway, so I secretly videoed about half of this because I thought, what if this escalates?
Yeah.
And then I rated him 1 star. I then get a call from Grab going, "We got this 1-star report. You said that the driver might be drunk." I said, "Yeah, the driver told me he smelled alcohol and it wasn't me, so he shouldn't be on the road." And then I got a call the next day saying, "Apparently you have a video. Can you send us it?" I said, "Actually," they said, "Can you send us it because we want to file a police report?" And I said, "Actually, I don't really want to get involved anymore, right?"
How
Like
did they know that you had a video?
Well, that's the thing. I never told them, so I imagine they guessed I did, or he told them that I'd videoed him. Right? That's the the unknown, right? Because I never mentioned on the phone that I had a video. So either
Yeah.
they guessed that and they went, "Can you send us your video?" Or he made a complaint about me. Now this is the important part. He must have made a complaint about me,
Yeah.
and presumably that involved this guy was filming me. And so what I found out was that I'd been banned from the app. They banned me from the app for whatever he'd accused me of. But they did this sneaky thing called a shadow ban. So rather than actually banning me and telling me on the phone, "Hey, we're banning you from our app," instead, what happens is you try to book a ride on the app and it just says all available drivers are busy. Would you like to try again? Or you try and order something and it says, "Oh, we're unable to take your request." And that's known as a shadow ban.
Yeah.
Now, their policy is they're not supposed to tell customers that they've been shadow banned. But I suspected I'd been shadow banned. And so I just called up and said, "Hi there, I'm calling about my shadow ban." They went, "Oh, yeah, yeah." So I was like, "Right, gotcha." And so I said, like, "Am I not going to be told like what the complaint against me was?" And they went, "Well, apparently you had a video in your defense, but you were unprepared to send the video." I said, "No, I said I didn't want to send the video because I didn't want to give this poor guy a police report. I said, let's just leave it here. This guy's obviously just had a bad night, tried to scam me, didn't. Enough's enough." And so now I literally cannot take a ride. And where I'm staying, there's no public transport. There's one bus an
Yeah.
hour. And so I've managed to basically strand myself. Likewise here in Thailand, couldn't get a, like this is like not just country specific, all across the region. Couldn't get a taxi from the airport. So now I'm living a kind of like an adventurous lifestyle where I'm having to like flag down tuk-tuks and barter like the old days.
This could be an opportunity for you to learn something about your conflict resolution skills.
Shut up, Bobby! Do we have any messages?
We do. We have this week we didn't get anything from Brian in Fukuoka, but we did get something from Brian from Fukuoka. He says,
Presumed dead.
"Ollie, you recently pondered about the effect of decreased tourism in Fukuoka. I have some perspective because I work at a hotel in Nakasu cleaning capsule beds. I hadn't given it much thought until you pointed it out, but actually there have been far fewer beds that I would describe as, quote, rat fucked." Any thoughts on this message?
What does that mean? What's rat fucked?
I guess there are less people rat fucking the beds, the capsule beds.
I don't know what. Hang on. I've just googled it. Rat fuck is a military term and refers to routing through an assortment of items and only taking what you need. Oh, so he's stealing from the customers?
Perhaps. I'm also not super familiar with this term, but my just initial impression overall is how ridiculously overwrought the diction is here. And I'm going to go ahead and call BS and say, Brian, it's clear that you do not work at a hotel in Nakasu. You are an Eikaiwa teacher.
Should we go to the news?
Let's check out the news.
Bobby Judo.
Yep.
There's a lot going on in these troubled times, but what is the most important story this week?
The most important story of the week is that some Japanese banks, including MUFG Bank Limited, has started offering a 1,000 yen incentive to its customers who will give up their paper passbooks and make the switch to online banking. Thoughts?
Well, oh my goodness. So I opened up a bank account in Japan for the first time in 2014. The only bank that I could set up was a Japan Post Bank because apparently they were the only ones that were friendly with the research visa that I had. Absolutely ridiculous that there was only one particular branch that I was allowed to go to. Right, there was like a branch that was set up with someone that dealt with new account openings and I asked them for a debit card. I was like, "Can I have is there any way I can get my money out of cash points?"
No.
And they were like, "Oh boy, oh boy, do you have a lot to learn?" There was me turning up going, "I'm looking for a way to deposit my Bitcoin and maybe do some." And they were like, "Listen, sir, if you haven't got your hanko, you're not coming in." And so I got given a bank book, and it was almost as if I was causing them trouble. They said, "Do you really, really need a cash point card?" I said, "Yeah." And so then I had to pay extra money to get a plastic bit of card, which functionally looks like a debit card, right? But it isn't. It can only be used in cash points to withdraw money.
Yeah, they only give you an ATM card, which you can use to make withdrawals or deposits. Debit cards have only recently started to gain kind of traction in Japan. And when I say recently, I'm going to say like the last 5 or 6 years. The average person probably still does not have or use a debit card. to the point where like there are TV commercials advertising the idea of debit cards and what they are.
But isn't it funny how Japan was so ahead of the curve with NFC in that the Suica cards or the Nimoka or Nanoka or there was about a dozen of them.
Yeah, the cashless cards that you can scan to get on transit, and you can also use those to purchase things in like convenience stores and restaurants.
Yeah, vending machines, that kind of thing. And then they unified the system. So rather than having 12 different systems, you could use the same card for all the different systems. But unfortunately, it was just a completely different technology that, say, Apple used for the NFC for their iPhone. So, like most of the iPhones until the last two generations couldn't be used with Japan transit systems. But my goodness, the bank system. So I would get, I had this book, right?
Yeah.
And each book you would put into the ATM, and you'd have to put it in on the correct page, a page which had some space left at the end.
Well, this is the
and then
paper
you'd put it in,
passbooks that they're talking about, right?
yeah, right. And so this is the thing which they're trying to get rid of, and frankly, good riddance. I was allowed to customize it, one of four designs. They brought me out a tray, and they said, "Which design would you like?" I said, "I'll take the black one, please, because that suits my personality." And they said, "How much money would you like in the account?" And I gave them all my money, which is about $100, because that suits my financial situation at the time.
Yep.
And they charge money to withdraw money. They charge money to send money. And basically, like the easiest way to spend money in Japan is by like just sending money. I think it was something like 200 yen to send money. But if it was after a certain time, it was like an extra 100 yen. It was like you were paying the ATM. It's overtime hours to use.
We should specify it. They don't charge you to withdraw money on always. They charge you money to withdraw money if you're using an ATM that is not one of their ATMs, or if it's not within business hours for the ATM, which is another huge thing that foreigners always criticize about Japan. Like, why should an ATM have business hours?
Just at 5 o'clock, you just imagine an ATM just ripping off a tie, cracking open a strong zero, and going, "Wow, what a day!"
Yeah.
Oh man!
But so this is very much an analog technology that Japan is way behind on getting rid of, and depending on the bank that you sign up with, some of them will allow you to open a bank account and get this paper passbook with your handwritten signature in it. But some of them still will not. They will require, and this is an issue that's gonna become a problem when they're trying to get people to switch to online banking. They will require an Inkan't, or what's also called a hanko. Do you want to explain what that is?
I think an Inkan't is different to a hanko, right? An Inkan't is a stamp, and a hanko is a seal, right? That's the way I understand it. The Inkan't is generally the smaller one, and I had to get one of these.
What's the difference between a stamp and a seal?
A stamp is for an individual. A seal is for an organization, is what I thought.
I've always used the terms interchangeably. And I know that there is a more casual personal one, and then there's a more official one that so like the personal one you can use for things like opening your bank account. You can use for signing contracts and things like that. And then there's a more official one, but it's also still personal, but you would use it for a much more weighty contract, right, like buying a house or something like that. But I would assume that a stamp uses ink and a seal uses wax.
Right. Yeah. I mean, frankly, debating this is like us having a conversation about the best wool to use in a loom.
Yeah.
Like it's pointless. But what's interesting is you can buy these. These are supposed to be a proxy for your signature, right? But most, like, there's, I don't know, about 100 Japanese names, which 80% of the population have. And so now you can just go to a 7-Eleven or a convenience store or a 100 yen shop and buy your hanko with your name on. Okay, this is how daft it was, right? Let me explain. So I was setting up an Airbnb with a friend whose surname is Watanabe, right?
Mm-hmm.
She uses different kanji to the normal kanji for Watanabe. She has like ones which are less common. She lives in Tokyo. I lived in Fukuoka. She stamped something with her actual Watanabe seal. Something else had to be signed. The agent said, "Can she sign it?" I said, "No, she's back in Tokyo." He said, "Can you send the stamp?" I said, "No." He said, "Here's what we're going to do. I will get rid of this first document. You go and buy a Watanabe stamp. we'll re-sign that first document with that stamp, and then as long as the second stamp matches, we're good. I was like, I was like, whoa, 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 just wait a minute.
Yeah,
What you're telling me is, as long as I have a stamp that says Watanabe, I can sign as her agent. He was like, no, 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 you're not her agent. You are her.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Absolutely ludicrous.
That's the major criticism from foreigners about these Incons is that they're so much more forgeable than, I mean, there you can replicate them so much easier than a signature.
It's an example of security theatre, right? Because for the same property, I had to get the water connected. I had a phone call from the water company, which said, "We'd like to connect your water. Can you tell us? Can you confirm the address and the name?" And I said, "Yes, it's her name, Watanabe. This is the address." And they said, "Am I speaking to the person in question?" Right? And I said, "No, I work with her." And they said, "Ah, sorry, we need to speak to the honnin. We need to speak to the person in question." I said, "Okay, well, she's not
Yeah,
here, so could you call back in 5 minutes and I'll make sure she's here?" And they said, "Yeah, no problem." They called back. Now, obviously, she was not there, right? She was in Tokyo. So I just got one of my female friends to say, "Someone's going to pick up the phone. You've just got to
yeah,
sound like a Japanese woman that might sound like Watanabe. Just say hi, 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 kakuni itashimasu. That's all you need to say, right? Just say hi,
yeah,
hi,
yeah,
hi,
yeah.
hi. Sono tori desu. Kakuni. And then that's exactly what happened. And they call up. Am I speaking to Watanabe? Yes, I am. And so then you get to this weird situation where you're just saying, "If do I just need to sound plausible in order to pass your stupid tests?" I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, good riddance to this dumb system.
Well, I mean, I think there's an element of performing security, like you said. There's also an element of being able to pass the buck, where like now if something happens, it's not their fault because they have plausible deniability. They talk to somebody and it doesn't really matter whether or not she was. It matters that you guys are the ones who said that she was. So like, I'm sure I've told you before,
Yeah.
but do you remember, I do this as like a Japanese comedy bit sometimes where I was sending some money home through a remit service and I hadn't used it in a long time. And they called me up on the phone and they said, "You sent a larger amount than you usually do, and we have to confirm a few things." And I said, "Yeah, sure." And they said, "So this amount of money that you've sent, will this be going to support terrorism in Iran or North Korea?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" like, like I think when I did it in Japanese, I joke about how like I was so shocked by the fact that they would ask this question on the phone. Like anybody in their right mind would be like, "Oh yes, yeah, actually it is."
I'm
That
bored of it.
yeah. So that my joke was that when they asked me, what I should have said was no, but I kind of like freaked out and panicked, and what actually came out of my mouth was dame nano, which is like, "Oh, is that not cool?"
Well, I think what should actually cause a red flag is for you to go, "You're going to have to define terrorism.
Yeah,
You're going to have
yeah.
to
It's
define your terms."
one man's freedom fighter. I mean, hey,
Exactly. Exactly.
it's all relative. So one thing that I find funny about this particular story is that the Asahi Shimbun, they went through and they did like a 3-part series on the hanko industry's current strategy to kind of preserve their their cultural hold on.
That's so ridiculous. I mean, that's like saying we've gone to an abattoir to talk to some cows about their strategy for survival.
Yeah, they have this association that is the hanko craftsmen are like losing so much business and it's a dying they're dying out without replacements. The business has shrunk to about 1/5 the size it was 40 years ago, according to this article. And so they're looking for things that they can do to save the industry. And so one of the association's executives proposed that hanko be recognized as a world cultural asset. Like I don't know if they mean like a UNESCO property or like the Japan has all these things that they'll say nationally designated bunkazai, juyo bunkazai, an important cultural
Yeah.
property. And the article it says an idea that went nowhere.
Well, what I love is one of the strategies they came up with is they gone right. So, having to stamp a document with a physical stamp that dips into ink and is stamped each and every time is cumbersome, pointless, and serves no purpose, and absolutely needs to be abolished. But instead of going that far with the logic, they didn't get quite far enough and said, let's automate it. And so this association has invested money in a robot which grabs the stamp and stamps documents for you. Which is basically, when you think about it, what they've done is they've taken a photocopier which can take any image and print it any number of times and scaled that photocopier down to being able to print only one thing uh, a certain number of times. It's like in their big reveal, they've gone, ta-da! We've taken a photocopier and removed 95% of the useful features.
So they lobby the government, right? And so they've got a handful of government advocates that they've recruited to their cause. And it says, so since digitalization is inevitable, the only recourse for hanko advocates is compromise. And in this, their best ally their best ally. That's not even a spinnerism. That's just a fuck up. Their best ally is 79-year-old information technology minister Naokazu Takemoto. He's the head of the group of politicians. This guy. You remember him?
Yeah, he's the guy who was appointed to the IT ministry and admitted that he'd never used a computer.
Yeah, he does. He did not know what a USB device was. They got asked about, like, how are you gonna handle security if anybody puts in a USB device that might be infected with some sort of virus or malicious technology. And he had no idea what a USB device was. And they asked him about, has he ever used one? And he admitted that he doesn't use he's never used his computer.
absolute joke, isn't it?
The article is so tactful in the way they call it out, but it says, however, as IT minister, this avowed lack of expertise has attracted ridicule. Takemoto's position as the de facto point man for the Hanko Association's attack may actually be working against their interests, since it emphasizes how out of touch Hanko culture is.
Well, one good thing about his appointment is since his appointment, my fax machine shares have skyrocketed.